Well, here it is, Christmas 2020, and there's some good news and there's some bad news. The good news, at least for some of you, is that because of COVID and the shutdown and whatnot, Santa hasn't really been able to check his list the way he normally would. And so some of you that maybe haven't been so good, you're going to slip by this year. The bad news is that because of the whole quarantine thing, Santa's been held up there, eating cookies all day and night, drinking hot cocoa to excess. Now he's so big they don't know if he's going to get down the chimneys. So there's going to be a lot to watch out for. It's been a rough year, I know. Hey, listen, I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a veteran, deployed and away from home on the holidays, some of my experiences with that. But before I did, I just want to say from my family to yours, from our home here in Pennsylvania to yours, Merry Christmas. I was trying to think what to do for a Christmas podcast, and I thought, I wasn't going to do anything initially. Nothing was really coming to my mind, all the craziness this year. Nothing really positive or encouraging to talk about in the news, and I thought, I'm not going to get into all that. And I had nothing. There was nothing really spiritual or uplifting that I had to offer. I thought, I'm just not going to do anything for the Christmas podcast. And then I thought to myself, well, maybe it'd be interesting to talk about what it's like to be deployed during Christmas. I think I tweeted out, not everybody comes home for Christmas, just as kind of a casual reminder of that our military is not necessarily enjoying time with their families and being able to take leave and so forth. And so as I was thinking about that, I thought, well, it'd be great. I'll talk about what it's like to be deployed, some of my experiences being deployed on Christmas. And so I was trying to think back, what was it like to be deployed on Christmas? I got to tell you, I don't really remember the actually celebrating Christmas on Christmas when I was deployed. I don't remember the day itself. Not something that I have any memory of. I don't know if some of the guys will be listening to this from my unit. Maybe you guys can refresh my memory because I do not remember anything. I remember Christmas time, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but I had no memory of the actual day as far as deployment. I'm not exactly sure where we were at that particular time, but I want to walk you through just the different Christmases that I had while I was in the military, because the point is not necessarily being deployed or not, but you have a lot of military that are away from their families for a variety of different reasons. Some just because they have duty on a base that they don't necessarily live on. If you don't know, I joined the Marine Corps 17 years old. So, and coming up on my 50th birthday, I look back on that time and the differences in who I am now and how I think differently, and in some cases not so differently. And some of that ties back with today. Some of that ties back with what I'm going to share with you today. I think I go with a different level of tact. I'd like to think I got a little smoother delivery. I'm not such a bulldozer anymore. But I think my beliefs are as strong as ever. And 17 years old, a big part of that process is for anybody that enlists in the military, you have to take the oath of enlistment. And part of that is swearing to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And to that end, I believe there's a bit of a moral dilemma going on for veterans today, a big moral dilemma, and I talk about it pretty regularly. Maybe something I need to start talking about a little bit more frequently, but, where do veterans fall in all this? What obligation do we have? And I kind of vacillate between, it's my duty to do something, to throwing up my hands and saying, I had enough, I did it. But anyway, I was born in Beaufort, South Carolina, which is where Parris Island is. If you don't know, it's a Marine Corps recruit training depot, Parris Island. Marine Corps boot camp. There's two of them. There's one in San Diego. But all the real Marines come out of Parris Island. That's just a fact, and everybody knows that. Well, at least everybody in the Marine Corps knows that. Some of the guys that come out of San Diego, they like to try and, suggest that it's just as difficult out there. But anyway, this is kind of part of the banter. I don't know why. I really don't know why. I don't know if there really is a difference. I know that within Parris Island, it was always thought that like 3rd Battalion, there's 3 battalions, 3 male battalions, 1 female battalion, which my mother was in. And yes, my mother was a Marine. Both my parents were in the Marine Corps. I was born in Beaufort, South Carolina, outside of Paris Island where they were stationed, both in the band, if you can go figure. What are the chances of that, right? And that's where I would go back to at 17 years old. But when I was there, was 3 male battalions, and I was in 2nd Battalion. And it was always the 3rd Battalion. They were like the toughest. They were like the craziest guys over there. And I got to tell you, once you're out in the Fleet Marine Corps, I don't know that anybody really notices any differences in it. Oh, you look like you came from 3rd Battalion. Nah, it doesn't work like that. Oh, you look like San Diego. Nah, nobody notices a doggone difference. So I don't know, all the banter that goes back and forth. I don't know at the end of the day that it's any more than just that, but I guess it, keeps the spirit alive, which is important. My time was at Paris Island. And there's a long history at Paris Island, some of it good, some of it not as good. It's, I think the mental transformation of becoming a Marine is the most challenging part. I don't think the physical part of boot camp, Marine Corps boot camp, I think, being the most difficult of all of the branch boot camps, the highest attrition rate and so forth. But at the end of the day, if you got a little bit of upper body strength and you can run, and either of those things are something that are, am I in the top 10 percentile? And I was able to navigate Marine Corps boot camp just fine. I think the most enjoyable part was graduating. But I started to say, let me finish. I think it's more of a mental transformation than it is the physical. You do change physically. You do, I think, mature. And I think overall, that was the one thing I would say that happens in boot camp as well as just the military service as well. There's a level of maturity that goes on in that 4 years that I don't think occurs in the same way, say, in college or just going right into the workforce. It's something that I think the military shares. But you get a little different perspective on life, and I think that's one of the benefits of being in the military. But I really never had any plans to join. I was planning on going to college. I was going to go to Drexel University for architecture. That was my plan. And I graduated high school when I was 17. I was a bit immature, to say the least. And I wasn't a super bad kid, but I was getting myself into a little trouble here and there. Nothing serious or anything like that. But I was just, for whatever reason, I was struggling. I had a lot of pent-up energy for some reason. And so really on kind of a whim, I joined the Marine Corps. And I think I was planning on going in the reserves. That was part of my college plan, was to be in the Marine Corps. And then I just decided at the last minute, I'm not doing that. I want to go active duty. And so I did, and left like a week later on my way to Paris Island. I remember leaving and being in the plane, leaving out of Philadelphia. And the process really begins immediately. And I spent the night before, like, go to bed, get a good night's rest the night before. I'm like, yeah, sure. Tell that any 17-year-old kid. I'm out with my buddies, we're drinking. I think the recruiter picked me up at like 3:30 or some god-awful early time, And down in Philadelphia by about 4:30, 5 o'clock at the processing center down there. And like, all right, be in Paris Island by, 3 o'clock this afternoon. No. There's a lot of waiting in the military. You start to learn that early on. And anyway, down there all day. And I remember being on the plane, at one point finally getting on the plane later that night and flying out of Philadelphia. Well, it was in the afternoon. I remember it was still daylight. But I just remember looking down on the city. And I loved flying at that time. And this is 1988. And August 1988, and looking out there, I just remember feeling on top of the world. That I knew that I was going to go be transformed into a United States Marine, and I was excited about that. And I get down there and land in Charleston, and there's some corporals down there. And they got a little bit of a bite to them. You get on the bus, and you get to Paris Island, and now it's late at night. It's been almost 24 hours. You're just arriving down there. And they keep you up like another 24 hours. That's part of that's how they break you right out of the gate. You're tired the minute your feet hit the deck. As soon as you arrive in Paris, I'm like, oh, good. Where's the bed? And they're like, not so fast. We have not prepared your accommodations just yet. And so you're so tired, you'll do whatever the heck you're told to do. And so you do. And you do that for whatever it is, 17 weeks? I don't think so. 13 weeks maybe. But anyway, graduating boot camp, it's an accomplishment. I love being on the rifle range. That was my favorite part. Looking out over the rifle range, you can see the gate leaving the island, and I think, being able to shoot and pass that test, it's one of the main accomplishments. It's one more cog in the wheel in getting you off that island. So it's an accomplishment. I loved it. I like to shoot, something I did my whole life and did it well and enjoyed being out there. It was probably my favorite part. But definitely graduation was the top favorite for sure. So my first Christmas, I was down in Camp Johnson, Camp Lejeune, and I do not remember this Christmas at all. I'm going to guess I was probably home then. After boot camp, we took some leave, and then shortly after that, it was Christmas. But I may have stayed down there. And horsed around, probably got drunk or something like that, but I was either in North Carolina or was home. I would have been not even 18 years old at that time. Not even 18. I think of my kids, and I'm like, I can imagine how my parents just must have been. And then my second Christmas, I had finished school at Camp Lejeune, and then I was assigned to my duty station in Hawaii, which was phenomenal. And so my second Christmas was in Hawaii, and I was 18 years old. And I learned a new phenomenon that Christmas. I spent it in Hawaii, right? I mean, I wasn't home, but it's a little hard to complain. I would imagine we had some pretty good food in the chow hall and whatnot, and did whatever we did. But the great thing that I learned was that if you take a beer and you get it cold enough that it just starts to get a little ice on the top, that point where it's just about to freeze is like the prime temperature to have beer. This is a lesson that I learned at 18 years old, okay? I just want you to know. But my third Christmas, I was 18 years old. And that Christmas, I was deployed. We were in Saudi Arabia. We had been gone, and maybe I was 19. I might have been 19. Had a little trouble with that part. But either way, we were deployed to Saudi Arabia. And I don't remember the day. I do not remember the day. I have no idea what I don't remember the chow. I don't remember any services. And I'm not saying there was or there wasn't. I just don't remember any of it. None of it rings any bell. Maybe some of the guys, like I said, maybe they can remember, remind me a little bit of that. I'm going to tell you this, though. It didn't bother me. I wasn't like sitting there, boo-hoo, it's Christmas, I'd rather be home with my family. I don't think of that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about duty and honor and commitment and what the hell that meant then. I don't know what it means today. I'm starting to lose a little track of that. I don't want to get too snippy here as we celebrate the birth of Christ. But point is, we were focused. We were focused on what was in front of us. That was the commitment we had. And I don't know. To varying degrees, we were happy to do it. I don't know. Happy is the right word to do it. But I hope I have the rum ball story in here. I want to make sure I don't miss I think I've promised some people the rum ball story. That's a Christmas story. I want to just make sure I stick to the outline now. If I get out of order, it's going to screw up the whole thing. But yeah, third one, we were deployed, and I don't even remember whether we were eating MREs or I don't even remember where we were at. I really don't. Probably somewhere up close along the border of Iraq there. They may have even been shelling us at that point. but I really can't recall. And then my fourth Christmas, I'm reasonably certain I was in Hawaii. And I have zero memory of that. Zero memory of that. I do not know. I like to say there's two sides to the Marine Corps, just to be clear. There's the public-facing side and then the back of the house, we'll say. And, you know, you really got to remember with the military, but especially the Marine Corps, that, you know, that back of the house, the function, the job of the back of that house is to kill people at the end of the day. It's violent. It's violent. It's a violent world. And the public-facing side, right, is the snappy uniforms and the dress blues and the ceremonies and the band and, you know, all the great stuff that we love. The flyovers, right? I'll tell you, a flyover in combat's a little different than a flyover at a football game. And I'm not saying that anything negative about either side. I'm just suggesting that it's two different sides. The public gets to see one of those sides, but the other side they don't. Only those who serve get to see. And there's something I think that's very distinguished about that. I really do. I'm proud to have been there. I wasn't always happy about it. I definitely didn't have the best attitude. I'm going to say that I have a good attitude of the 4 years I was in, of all those days. I mean, let's just call it 1,300 days for the sake of conversation. Was I in a positive mood 650 of those? Was I in a positive mood half the time? Probably not. I mean, one of the other funny stories goes around the unit about me is I was not the best with my money, which is probably the understatement of the century. I was always borrowing money, I mean, we didn't make much, but I certainly did my best to make sure it didn't go very far. Well, I ate a lot. I mean, that was part of, I should have got some kind of cost adjustment. I mean, it's not like I got enough in the chow hall. I always had to augment to some degree. But when I look back and the reconnection that I've had, well, let me tell you the story of our 25th reunion, because that's probably one of the best stories of my my best military veteran stories. And, you know, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I wasn't even 21 years old. I was still 20 years old. I just had this real chip on my shoulder. You know, angry, ramped up. I mean, it was just very aggressive. You know, people were nervous to be around me. And you know, at the time, I didn't really get. I was like, what's the matter? I'm a nice guy. You know, they're like, you're freaking me out, dude. And I didn't really notice it at the time. Looking back on it, I definitely see how I was full speed ahead, and I paid a bit of a price for that in some ways. But when I got out of the Marine Corps, I really distanced myself from the whole thing. I didn't really talk about it too much. I didn't reconnect with many of the guys at all. Just didn't really think about it. And 25 years later, right? Facebook, of all places. And one of the buddies, our brother KT, Colorado, he started using Facebook as a tool to go find the guys from there. I guess he found the roster and just started connecting and expanding, you know, kept working at it. And he starts building this little thing. And I don't even know if it was him who found me. I think they had different guys looking into, you know, helping as the network grew and grew. Just a really interesting story and a fascinating use of Facebook. And pretty soon they had, like, you know, out of 130 guys or whatever, they had like 100 of them in this Facebook group. Really phenomenal. And so we were able to reconnect through that. And then they set up a 25-year reunion. And we did that down in Washington, D.C., and it was just phenomenal. The battery gunny was there, called the unit into formation. We sang the Marine hymn. I mean, it's just really a phenomenal experience to reconnect all those years later. And I think something, at least for me, was just one of the most life-giving experiences. And we've gotten together a few times since then, and there's plans to do it again here now. But COVID, I think, is going to be largely in the way of all that. But, you know, here's what I would say about the Marine Corps. I mean, talk about a dysfunctional group of people. And those that are in know exactly what I'm talking about. Warped sense of humor, myself included. I was driving the other day. I'm like, I think I got some. If anybody listened to my self-thought, they'd be like, man, this guy's got some serious mental issues. Like I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if normal people think like this. But you know, we came from different backgrounds, different places, different religions, different ethnicities, inner city, rural, smart, dumb as rocks, you know. And you know, some of these guys had some pretty checkered paths, and you know, had to get waivers and stuff like that to get in. You know, there was and you had your choir boys as well, so you really had the whole gauntlet of it. And we would go at it. I mean, like I said, the back of the house is violent. And that's not something you turn on and turn off necessarily. It's the kind of some kind of throttle up or down is kind of where that goes. It's never on or off. It's just the up or down is where that kind of works out. But anyway, the thing that I would say, I think unequivocally, is that the Marine Corps and the people in the Marine Corps was a place of people that I could relate to. And I laugh about it because I'm like, you guys are messed up, man. I'm sure they're looking at me saying the same thing. Like, man. But we're a family, you know, there's no doubt about it. And our unit, I think, definitely shared us for some reason, just a unique bond and a unique experience that not everybody in military service gets to relate to. I think, you know, everybody's military experience is worthy of being recognized for sure. And but different units take on different character, have different experiences, and I think for us it was part of that. It was just this dynamic of the individuals, which, like I said, was very dysfunctional. It's easy to look back now and romanticize the whole thing, but at the time it was a pretty tattered bunch, you know. But somehow we made it work, and then we had these experiences of these different deployments together, and there was this building of character, I think, individually, as well as the unit as a whole. And we had some really, really, really respectable leadership that still engages the unit today. I mean, the character of Marine Corps officers is parallel to none. You know, they eat last. They never stop serving, but you know, some are better than others, of course. But and our enlisted leadership, you know, our battery gunny and some of the platoon sergeants and the first sergeant we had early on. I mean, some of these guys just incredible men of character and service. So when it came time to deploy, I went to school in Camp Lejeune, get sent to Hawaii, end up in a ground combat unit, artillery battery. I went to Motor T school, truck driving school. Go to Hawaii, get sent to Alpha Battery, which is a artillery battery, and end up deploying to Saudi Arabia when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait back in 1990. And I mean, I don't even think most of us knew where the heck we were going. We had no idea. He invaded Kuwait 4 days later, and we were making plans to go. And I think a couple days later, I was on my way out. And I was on one of the advance party to leave from our unit, so I didn't go with my whole unit. Flew out of Hawaii to Wake Island, to Guam, to Singapore, where in Singapore, I took a ship to the Persian Gulf, to the port of Al-Jabar. And the only thing we got there was us and a couple of Patriot missiles. We were like the first 150 Marines there, those of us on that advance party. And so we got there, and it wasn't long. I don't know, a week, maybe 2 weeks later, the rest of the unit came in by plane, and we were already offloading equipment from those ships when we got married up, and then we headed out into the desert. And so that was in August. And so then we were waiting for quite a while as the Army and some of these other, the Air Force, all kind of got mobilized. You know, the Marine Corps is smaller, much more faster moving. And so we were there waiting for a while. We just kept kind of advancing. We would pull back for a while. This is between August and December. We would pull back, then we would move up a little further. It seemed like we were constantly going a little further, a little further, a little further north. And then at some point, and I don't remember before Christmas, after Christmas, during Christmas, an air campaign began, and you know, there was just a lot of military activity, let's say. And at that point, we're so close to the border. Well, I don't know what began first, the air campaign, or we started getting shelled by our Iraqi artillery every night. Every night we're getting shelled. Air campaign began, and then at some point in that process, we would go up to the border and shoot, and then abruptly leave, run. Dirty little tricks the Marine Corps likes to use. Here, have a couple of howitzer rounds, loser. See you later. And oh man, I'll tell you, those were some of the most adventurous times. I'll tell you, you know, right on the edge of catastrophe. I'll tell you, it was apocalyptic and crazy, very crazy. I'm not going to go into all, this isn't a war stories video. We're talking about being deployed during the holidays. But that was about what was going on then. I think Kafji, the Battle of Kafji, happened sometime in January, I think, so it would have been after all that. And so I really don't, I remember like boxes coming in, care packages coming in, but let me tell you this Rumball story, because it's a pretty good one. And I think even if you're not in the military, I think you can appreciate this pretty well. So somehow I got somebody in the chow hall to get me some yeast, and somehow I found out that you could use yeast to create your own alcohol. As it fermented, it created alcohol, okay? So this is great. I took a 5-gallon plastic water jug, and I mixed the Kool-Aid from the MRE packs. I'm grabbing all these Kool-Aid packets. I'm mixing. They weren't even all the same flavors. This is a nasty punch. And then I put the yeast in there. I put the cap on. And the first one, I didn't know what I was doing. The bottle, I go out there and the bottle stretched out because this stuff expanded. Like, no, you got to poke some holes in there. So we do that. And now, so we get through the learning curve. We're a couple batches into this by Christmas. Because you can't have alcohol over there. And we were going to have none of that. I mean, that was horrible to exist like that. And so we get the process down a little bit, and I'll tell you, to this day, I have some intestinal issues, which I think are in large part because of that stuff I made and drank over there, and some of the stories. But let me just stick with the Rumball story. So here we are around Christmas time. We're under this net, this camouflage net, and you're not supposed to have alcohol or anything. We're down there, you know, knocking down this nasty yeast punch that I was filtering through socks. That's new socks, not dirty socks. So here comes the platoon sergeant. This guy, Sergeant Jones. Now, Sergeant Jones, you know how wide tobacco in his mouth, you know what I mean? And he was like from West Virginia. So, you know, he'll come in there, hey. And he says, he comes right in. It was like no warning. He just shows up. And we're like, you know, trying to hide our drinks. And so he's telling us like, hey, is that me? I smell some alcohol in here. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to the brig. I was thinking I was going to become a decorated war hero, and I'm going to end up in the brig with this bootleg booze I've been making. So God bless this man, my brother Tom. I don't want to say his last name. He says, hey, Sergeant Jones. He says, it's the Rumballs my mom sent me. Would you like one? He's like, oh, well, thank you very much. Now, how a man eats a cookie with a dip in his mouth, you know he's hardcore at that point. But that's the Rumball story. You know, we escaped certain death there, man. We're going up the river, baby. Oh, boy, oh, boy. Good old Tom. Save the day. Mom's rum balls. God bless Christmas, huh? Used to have a saying in the Marine Corps. I remember it got thrown out a lot in boot camp, but we would say, you joined us, we didn't join you. It was saying when somebody wasn't happy or they want to put up with it. Sometimes I was on the receiving end with the idea, yeah, you joined us. If you don't like it, you can just, the only person you can blame for that is yourself. But at the same time, for those of us that serve, it's true. We joined. We volunteered for it. So, no sour grapes. And I don't have any at this point. I got rid of all those while I was in. But we answered the call. When the call came and we were asked to at the end of the day, do everything we could for our country, we did. Every one of us, we did. We answered that call. And yeah, maybe we bitched and groaned about it from, here and there. But we did it. We packed our trash and we followed the orders and we went and did it. And I think that, something that and I don't stay super connected to the today's military. I have a couple of brothers that are still on active duty, amazingly. I'm about to turn 50 years old, so it gives you a little idea. I think I was the youngest guy in my unit, so some of these guys are really continuing on for a long time, which is amazing to me because the idea of going out and running a couple of miles right now is not super appealing to me. But, signing up as a young man, you learn something about service and commitment. And I'll tell you a funny story about that, a little service and commitment story for you. So I told you my mother and my father were in the Marine Corps. And I thought when I came home to join, initially I was going to join the reserves. And I came home to tell my father. And he threw the brochure back. He says, the stupidest thing I ever heard of. Oh, easy there. I knew you weren't super happy about it, but stupidest thing you ever heard of? I mean, come on, it can't be that. So about halfway through boot camp, you get to make a phone call home. And I called my father was tough, man. He didn't mess around. I'm like, hey, Dad, I'm in boot camp. He's like, I know. I'm like, you remember what you told me? He's like, yeah. He said it was a stupid idea. He's like, yeah, I remember. I said, yeah, well, you were right. He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, now you have 4 years to think about it. So the commitment was there. And, even in boot camp, like the idea of not graduating or not making it or quit, it just, I'll tell you a little bit of a story on the commitment side. I couldn't swim when I joined. This is the stupidest thing I ever did in the world. And it worked out to be one of the biggest gifts I've ever received. I didn't know how to swim. I had a drowning incident when I was 10. I was unconscious in the bottom of a pool. They had to pull me out and revive me. Didn't know how to swim. I go in the Marine Corps. I don't know how this was never properly and fully discussed, but it wasn't. And the test was very simple. Wearing a camouflage utility uniform, you have to tread water in the pool without touching the sides or bottom. You have to do that for 8 minutes. Now, that uniform, it gets a bit heavy there. But if you know what you're doing, it's not really hard to do. Well, I didn't know what I was doing. But in my mind, I said, you know what? I could do anything for 8 minutes. This is me at 17 years old. I can hold my breath. As long as I don't touch the bottom of the pool, I'll be okay. And I'm there in the pool, and I think I got in there about maybe 51 seconds, and I'm flailing my arms, yelling for help. And they were not very helpful at all. And they were not very happy. But I had to go through this remedial swim program, which turned out to be the best. But I remember when I failed the test, I can't fail boot camp. Like, I can't not graduate boot camp. And I did get through that. It's one of the stories I tell in my book, Be the Lion. And so much that I learned from that little story at 17 years old, flailing my arms in that pool. And I was pretty afraid because I knew what it was like to have to be resuscitated. And, I spent some time in the hospital and so forth. As much as we kicked around in the barracks and and complained about being in the Marine Corps and everything that we had to do, there was a pride in service. You know, when you had that uniform on, or, you know, when you were off base talking about what you had done and accomplished, it had a much different glow to it, as it still does today, and as it should be. But I think there is a pride in service that's shared amongst all the branches. I see that. And, you know, one of the topics that's come up recently is this kneeling for the national anthem and the military's view on that. And I will say to you, you know, when I hear the national anthem, and sometimes it brings tears to my eyes, it's a moving experience for me. You know, I've seen firsthand I know what I've sacrificed, what others have sacrificed, what countries less fortunate than ours look like. You know, I've seen all these things. And so it's meaningful to me that the national anthem. So the idea of people kneeling for it at all and disrespecting them. I know some of the comments, well, it's not disrespecting. It's I suppose. And I've even said, you know, don't play it at all if it's going to be that controversial, which is a doggone shame as well. But, you know, the esprit de corps that we feel towards the Marine Corps, I don't know how that means anything without a pride in country. And so to see the country so unraveled, it's hard to genuinely, I think, feel support for the military at the same time. And I know that's not universal. There's many people that are very, very supportive, but there's definitely an anti-military element that's brewing, an anti-police, anti-military. I think I mentioned earlier that I think today that there's a bit of a moral dilemma for veterans that have sworn an oath to defend and protect the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. As we watch now, the First Amendment, the right to free speech. Without it, what freedom do we possibly have? And what am I talking about? Our own president was being censored. I know there's a lot of disagreement. Some people think, well, he's a liar. Yeah, but we don't censor liars. That's the point. We allow them to be heard. We may mock them. We shame them, whatever we're going to do to react to that, depending on the situation. But we don't silence people. That hasn't been one of the principles. And here we are. Second Amendment, the simple right of people to protect themselves has been heavily desecrated. And then you look at the lockdown orders. Oh, all in the interest of public safety. But the Constitution doesn't refer to that. You see what I'm saying? And so I would say to you for myself, and I know from speaking with other veterans, that as these events continue to unfold, I believe we face a great moral dilemma in terms of what is our role in these matters? What is our obligation in these matters? And, you know, I want people to remember in all this that, you know, the United States, what happens here is not just a matter affecting us, but for people around the world. How so? Because this country has been the roadmap of freedom. You know, these symbols that we have, the Statue of Liberty, the Liberty Bell, Mount Rushmore, these symbols of freedom, the bald eagle, these majestic symbols of freedom, that it had stature on the freedom scale, and it did. Not ever be seen before on this planet, at least not that we know of. And it was here. And it was here. And with that took place an advancement in civilization, an advancement in technology, an advancement in manufacturing and quality of life, not likely ever seen before. Look at what came out of this country. Planes, cars, telephone, the modern machines to make clothing, the space shuttle, computers, the internet, so much in medicine, the internet. It goes on and on and on. All came from here. All that innovation came out of this small republic that today is in deep trouble. And what role veterans have to play in that. But I think it's important to remember who we are and why it came to be. It came to be from people that ran away from what it is that we're becoming, if not already have. I hope it doesn't get wasted. I'll leave it at that. The last thing that I wanted to mention a little bit as just a little bit of a important public service announcement before I thank you and wish you a Merry Christmas. There's a lot of talk about the 22 a day, right? The veteran suicide problem. And I see a double-edged sword with this. I think awareness is good. There are good resources at the VA. They're not perfect. You know, if you are dealing with somebody or you yourself is at risk, you know, go check out the VA website. There's a VA hotline. Most of that's staffed by combat veterans. They're there to help you. If that doesn't work, call your own local public assistance. They'll get you to the resources you need. Don't be afraid to reach out. Reach out to people within your unit. And I would say to you, for the guys that have served, you do get somebody in your unit reaches out to you. Take that call. You know, we've had a couple of suicides, and it's hard. It's very difficult. And so we have a rule. When somebody calls from our unit, I don't care what I'm doing. I got Mr. Trump, Mr. President, I got to take this. I don't know. That's a little shaky right there. But anyway, one of the things that I fear with all this is that as we continue to paint something into a corner, it only goes into the corner. That this idea that veterans are broken. There is no doubt a transformation that goes on in the military. I've often said that I think anybody who gets out of Marine Corps boot camp probably has a little PTSD, you know? But as General Mattis said, you know, there's also post-traumatic growth. And I think that's very true, where you have a lot of veterans that have been able to excel and do great things with their lives. And I think that is something to be encouraged by. We don't have to fall victim to this negative story, even if we're not feeling so good. Like, I don't always have my best days ever, and some days you got to kind of pull yourself up, and I think that's only human. Get frustrated with people and society, and I don't relate well to other people because I do relate well to these dysfunctional veterans, and it makes me a little crazy sometimes, and you have to recognize how that's affecting you and keeping yourself healthy. But there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity there to have taken that stress and to be able to take those burdens, which are heavy at times, and to be able to take that and transform that into a mature, wise ability to impact what's going on around you. That's pretty profound, I think. And that's, I think, a big part of why I'm here today. I'll leave you with this. This is my dedication to service, my dedication to continuing service, my message, this podcast, and continuing to do this every day. I get paid to do it. I want to get paid to do it. I do it because I love to do it. I love talking to you. And I love talking about these matters that affect our country and affect our world, and being able to share different thoughts and ideas with people and all that. It's a gift to me in my own way of taking that leadership and what I have to offer and bringing it out to the world to do something with it. And I encourage you to do the same, whether or not you've been in the military, but especially if you have. Now is a time more than ever when this country needs strong leadership. And that means us. It means guys like me, girls like me, men and women that have served. That now's a great opportunity to step up in our communities in so many different ways and use those skills that we learned in the military. Now's a good time for it. So I'm Christopher Scott. If you don't know who I am, I hope you'll come by and check out the Christopher Scott Show podcast, the ChristopherScottShow.com. I served in the Marine Corps from 1988 to 1992, joined when I was 17 years old. Couldn't have been a better thing I did for my life. I have no regrets. I learned a lot from it. And to anybody who's thinking about joining the military today, including my son, who's going to go in April, leaving for the Air Force. So we're excited about that too. Hey, Merry Christmas 2020. Let's go 2021. I think things can only get better from here. What do you say? Make it a great day. Merry Christmas.